I've been a fan of his and his band for, well, since day one. And they are going to celebrate the 30th anniversary, maybe a year or two late, thanks to COVID, of their debut album, Shake Your Moneymaker. Joining us right now, lead singer of the Black Crowes, Chris Robinson. Chris, thanks for the time, man. Good to have you on. How's things going? Okay.
Things are going fantastic. We're super excited to finally get out and play a little music, hopefully see some music this summer. And, like anyone else, just get back a little bit back to normal and, have respect for our fellow man and all that kind of stuff. We'll try to maybe put out some vibes. I think so much of the last couple of years have been dictated by fear and ignorance that it's time to kind of take it back with some reality and stuff.
We were talking before we came on the air about family, and you were telling me about your kids, and I think you said 17 and 11 were the ages on your kids, and
right.
We were just talking about all that. I mean, the last year and a half for a lot of musicians who have been unable to tour, it's been a great thing for them to be able to be around and reconnect with family. Is that something you've been able to do? What's the last year that was derailed, the year or so been like for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm lucky to have two amazing kids. I'm unlucky that they're with two different relationships, two different moms. So one lives in LA, one lives in Woodstock. So I got to see the LA one, my son, Ryder, but I didn't get to see my daughter for quite a long time, which was hard. But I mean, I think the rock and roll part of life is like they're both used to dad being on tour, So I think we have a really great relationship in terms of like, okay, dad doesn't go to work and come home every day. This is what he does. And, now they're older, they have and getting older, they have different access to be with dad. And you know what I'm saying? But I think the whole thing, like for millions, I mean, the idea that millions of people's trajectory has been changed, that we've all had to deal, has made it easier, you know what I mean? As opposed to kind of wallowing in some sort of, it's horrible. But it's tough. It's been tough. I mean, I love being at home. I've got to, I'm always reading, but I got to read twice as much as I normally would. I've really upped my French cooking skills. We listen to a lot of music, and I think a lot of people, great days and bad days, you know what I mean? But really under the microscope of what that means, you know what I mean? Like really, some days I just don't think I could have got out of bed, man. You know what I'm saying? It just felt so overwhelming and so horrible. But life's that way anyway. You know what I mean? Like I think it's adolescent to think that we're not, and the same thing about being in I love that rock and roll has been my career and my job for over 3 decades, but that doesn't take away from depression and, bad things happening or, things out of your control or whatever, so I think if anything, the musician and the artist, I think we're built to deal a little bit. You know what I mean? We're built to have a little flexibility in there.
Yeah, well, no doubt. Now, we're going to talk about this tour coming up because it is finally going to happen and the dates have been reannounced. But just in terms of the tour was supposed to happen already and we all know it was derailed. But in the time that you did have home, you listen to music, you read books, you work on your cooking. Did you write music? Did you think about, and is there talk of another Black Crowes record? Did you and your brother maybe get together definitely. On that front?
I mean, it's funny because Rich and I, for whatever we've been through, the one thing that we've always managed to, our one place where we're always like the most together and never we fought on stage, we fought backstage, we fought in an Italian restaurant in Berlin, we fought at this, but it's like, but when we're writing, it has always been our like sweet spot, and yeah, it's been amazing to get to where Rich and I are today. and we're in a great, great place as brothers and as partners in this band and as songwriting partners. So we've written about 20 new Black Crowes songs, wow. Which has been really cool. And you know, we're really, and you know, this whole idea of the Shake Your Moneymaker thing has really brought a lot of focus back to like, wow, how much I fucking love rock and roll music. Oh my God. Sorry.
It's all right, man. No problem.
No thanks.
Chris has got a dog barking and people knocking. And
I know.
It was totally quiet before we went on the air, and then as soon as we went live, everything went crazy.
I know my dog has been sleeping. My Jamaican street dog. She's been sleeping all day, and she's like, "Oh," but sorry about that.
That's all right. So 20 new songs.
Yes, and like rock and roll songs, you know. I think this Shake Your Moneymaker is really inspired, you know, visiting that record and that being our presentation has really inspired Rich and I to like, you know, to quote the MC5, to kick out the jams a little bit and really refocus on, you know, all the things we love about the power of rock and roll and the rawness. You know, Shake Your Moneymaker was our most concentrated effort of rock, you know. We went off into so many different things after that. I mean, I think rock and roll is always the bloodline, you know, through all of it. But just like, you know, from the Stones Faces to AC/DC, and, you know, it could even be X and the Circle Jerks and Black Flag, whatever we were in, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff is focused. And we're kind of back there, you know, and so it's been super fun. We're not in a real hurry to get in the studio. You know, our focus is this tour and the touring and kind of celebrating, you know, the Black Crowes and what we've done and where we started.
You know, I'm curious because you talked about the relationship with your brother and that it's the strongest it's been in a long time, which is great to hear, because I think myself and others may have been worried that in the year or so that everyone was derailed, the downtime, you know, what do they say about idle minds? That we could have heard the Black Crowes imploded before you got off the mat. But it sounds like the time that time has maybe even strengthened things a bit between you.
I think, you know what, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's, you know, the sort of build up to where we were going has been so good. And, but I was kind of like, I mean, I don't think we would have had any issues on the road, but not being on the road has just given us time to, how are the kids? You know, our mom's 82 years old. Rich lives in Nashville where mom lives. It's been tough with her and COVID. Like, how's mom? You know, like, you know, it's funny, like family in general, you know, the kids are a big part of also of why it's been nice to reconnect and have this relationship. Cause, you know, my daughter's like, by the way, what's the deal with Uncle Rich? You know, and I'm like, you have to start, you know, they're very transparent, you know what I mean? Because they know they're not going to take any shit, you know, they're like, what is it? So you really, you know, I'm 54 years old and Rich just turned 52. We have to really dig deep and look at it, you know what I mean? And I think we're in such a cool place where we both we're agreeing on everything. We're in each other's lives on a daily basis. We're super proud and happy where this tour is, you know, turning out to be fantastic. And we have great team in place. You know what I mean? We have people around us who are, I think the main concern isn't like how much money can we get off of them and the work, you know, and it's more like, wow, you know, if Chris and Rich are together, that's where the real power of this thing starts from. That's the soul of this band. And that's the energy it takes to do something. I think the Black Crowes have, in a world of amazing rock and roll bands of all sorts of styles, shapes, colors, sounds, textures, that we've been unique in our trip, you know, that we've been on. And I think that's the real focus, is to keep Rich and I in a place where we feel good, you know what I mean? Where we feel good about the dynamic, you know, where it's like, wow, anything, you know, let's be positive, you know. I think the last 10 years of our solo projects and I kind of think like, oh, I went off into the wilderness of deep psychedelic hippiedom and wandered around on an alien planet. And and Rich in his own way did it too. And if we hadn't, I don't think if we hadn't made that break, you know what I mean? Then it would be hold on a second. What are you doing? We hadn't
So
made that.
times...
It's the dog.
Go ahead, man. Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
If we hadn't made that break, I don't think we would have been in the place to be where we are today, you know? So take a negative thing and turn it into a positive thing, you know?
Yeah, well, it's great to hear. And when you reference, obviously, the history of the Black Crowes, I mean, having been on board with the band from day one, when the band came out, it was in the teeth of the whole MTV, you know, hard rock world. You were so different than that. Even to this day, the Black Crowes have been uniquely its own thing. I saw you perform at the Wiltern a few years ago. You did when you did the Black Crowes set, when you did As the Crow Flies. I was at that show.
Oh,
and
cool.
and I never saw the Wiltern more packed in my life, and I thought the set was fantastic. And you had Audley up there with you, and I think it was Marcus King playing guitar. And did that? I wondered, because you look like you're having so much fun up there. You were dancing around the whole night, singing great, playing all those great songs. Did that play any role, Chris, in reigniting your interest to reconnect with Rich and do this?
You know what? It completely did. I mean, and as great as all those people you just named, that whole band I thought was fantastic, and we had so much fun. But yeah, you know, it is funny because, you know, I'm like, oh wow, it had been a long time since I had been that front man, you know what I mean? And it definitely starts the wheels turning of, this is really good, but you know, the Black Crowes are another thing, and that's me and Rich. And you know how life goes, man. I mean, it's about so many things come into play, and so many people play it close, you know, because it's showbiz. But you know, depression is real, you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, you know, I've had great moments and I've had really down moments, and you know, this overwhelming melancholia like exists. But in the last, you know, 5 years or whatever, my marriage, you know, my wife who's a deep rock and roller and punk rock lady in the world, you know, has just helped a million things too. You know what I mean? To kind of like, you know, I don't want to have any negative feelings about the Black Crowes and my family. I don't want to have any regrets about what could be, you know what I'm saying? So it's cool to get to move into a different time of life, you know what I mean? And be like, wow, to really see it for what it is. And maybe to understand, like, you know, it doesn't go on forever. I mean, yeah, you could be the Rolling Stones, but that's the Rolling Stones, man. You know what I mean? They're like the ones, you know what I'm saying? Like they're responsible for a lot of bad behavior and cool records, you know what I mean? So just to have a cool perspective and to see it. And it is, I do have to say the one thing about Rich and I as well, and it was difficult for people, especially in our early days. We believe the mythos of rock and roll. You know what I mean? We understand the magic of rock and roll. It affects us. When you know, I was laughing. I have a, you know, Rolling Stones logo tattooed on my arm. And just for whatever reason, yesterday my wife and I were listening to Sticky Fingers. And I was like, wow, I forget, I love the Stones so much. I want to go get another Stones tattoo of the same one on the other arm. But it could be.
Did you?
No,
did you yet?
No,
by the time the tour starts, you'll have one on each arm, maybe.
But it's the same thing I was telling you. My 11-year-old loves Guns N' Roses, and you know, I hadn't listened to like Appetite in a long time. And this was last summer, and we were driving up to Mendocino County, and I was like, let's listen. We listened to the whole thing, and I was like, oh my God, this record is great. We had so much fun listening to it. Or I could listen to you know what I mean? Whatever it is, like, wow, I love. It's more than ever. I want loud guitars and rock and roll. I wish rock and roll was full of, you know, 100 Axl Roses or Courtney Loves or whoever's been difficult or weird. You know what I mean? Like, it just, everything is so.
Or Chris Robinson's, man. Throw yourself in there.
All right, I'll throw myself. You know, one thing,
sure.
Rock and roll for us a little older people, rock and roll is about defiance, not compliance, and that could be in a number of things. You know what I mean? It's kind of like. I'm not past some of that original interest and original love of that, of what that is, you know.
Yeah, you know, there's a documentary coming out in a couple weeks on Kiss, and I saw an advanced cut of it. And Bob Ezrin, the legendary producer who did some of their records, was talking in it. And they were, you know, the band was kind of the same old story, piling on their original lead guitarist, Ace Frehley. And they were saying, you know, he was on drugs, he was on alcohol, he was reckless. We weren't sure what. And Ezrin cuts in now in an interview and he goes, you know what? Ace was the most rock and roll guy in the band.
I was about to say, you described all
that element. Yeah.
Yeah. People, you know, you described all the reasons why when I was a kid, I bought his solo record and none of the other ones.
The other thing about the artists you mentioned, and yourself included too, and this is one of my biggest soapbox issues in the world, Chris, and that is what I call epidemic of bands out there touring, playing not really live, you know, fakery tracks, lip syncing. It's maddening to me. It's insulting as a rock fan. It flies in the face of what rock and roll is about. And I've always given you guys so much credit and respect because you've never done that bullshit. You always come warts and all live when you hit the stage. And I think that's amazing.
I mean, rock and roll is not about perfection. You know, building a bridge or a dam, that's about perfection. Right. You know what I mean? We're about vibes. And like you said, you know, and to me, rock and roll has to be like, you know, a little bit like this. And yeah, I'm not interested in, we never were interested in exactly recreating something. And you know what, man? The muse she is a vengeful goddess, and you have to always remember your devotion to her, and she wants your devotion. And when you leave that, she becomes angry and she will take from you. You know, I honestly believe this. And you know, it's the same, you know, like I said, like the first time I had a fake ID and I snuck into the most amazing, like, punk new wave indie club ever was in Atlanta called the 688 Club. And I had I somehow I got a ticket back in Georgia in the 80s. They gave you a carbon copy of your license. That was your license till you paid your ticket and got your license back. Well, you could put cheap perfume on the carbon and remove it and just put another date on it. And I went and I saw the Replacements on the Let It Be tour. And I walked in the club. I couldn't believe I got in. I walked straight to the front row. Like all of, Pete Buck and Mike Mills and Michael Stipe on the side of the stage. It's a tiny little place. It was like, but it was, you know, Shangri-La for us. And the Replacements came out and Bob Stinson was still in the band. And he had a dress on and they were like drunken and wild. And it was so beautiful. And I was like, you know what, that's, again, the feeling of when those amps come on, and you know what I mean? And it's like, I still get that way when I see bands, you know, when I see band that I love. Or it could, but by the way, it could be any kind of music, but it has to be sincere. It has to be passionate. Yes. This tour, we don't have any in-ears and, you know, like there are monitors on the stage. I'm not the singer who's messing with his belt loop all the time, trying to get it. It's about air and energy and this vibration. And, you know, that's what we like, man. You know, I've been in a band with Jimmy Page. He fucking plays loud. That's what Led Zeppelin, you know what I mean? I've toured with AC/DC. They're fucking loud. You know what I mean? Especially when Malcolm, God bless him, was alive. You know what I mean? Bands like that. And that's the energy. That's the energy, you know?
Let's talk about the tour. And again, it kicks off July 20th and runs in the U.S. through September 25th, ending in Bethel, New York. And then you go over to Europe, the Black Crowes celebrating Shake Your Moneymaker, their debut album. The band, Chris, that you're going to have, besides, of course, you and your brother, did I hear correctly that Sven is coming back to the band and that he's returning?
Yeah, totally. We were so stoked to have our brother. I mean, Sven, we've all been in bands together, and you know, we all like moved out of our parents' houses together in '87. He was in another band, but yeah, we're super excited to have Sven back. Our band is chock full of amazing people. We have Isaiah Mitchell. I don't know if you know, I'm sure a lot of your audience knows the band Earthless. Great, maybe not metal, but kind of stoner rock, harder band. Incredible three-piece band, incredible guitarist. The great Joel Robino from one of my favorite bands of all time from Oakland called the Once and Future Band is on keyboards. We have Sven back, and we have Brian Griffin on drums. So we're really, really excited. And yeah, we're getting ready to, start rehearsals here in a couple weeks. And, the first 2 dates are in Nashville. It's going really good, man. I think for us to be excited about again, we've been such an enigma sometimes to not just our audience, but to rock fans in general. Sometimes, like, what are they? What are they doing? It looks like this one day, now it's like this or whatever. And I think, like I said, to focus on so the presentation is Shake Your Moneymaker from start to finish. And then after that, we'll play a bunch of subsequent hits. And I think the most popular songs, the songs that our fans really want to hear. And I'm really excited to take the same energy we put into all this exploration and all these other statements we wanted to make. We're putting in even more into this sort of focused show in a way, that we probably haven't done since 1992,
Is the show going to open with Shake Your Moneymaker, and are you going to play it in sequence?
Yeah, we play it in sequence. That's the first hour of the show.
Okay, and then you'll come back and do maybe another hour of other songs.
Yeah, we're not even gonna come back. We'll just roll right into other songs from other records and stuff.
I'm a big By Your Side fan, and and you got to get A Conspiracy in there. That's one of my all-time favorites too.
It's on the list. We were laughing about the guys in the band. In the mid 2000s or whatever, the Black Crowes we'd have 300 songs we could play at any night. You know what I mean? Whether it's, a Manassas song or, one of our songs or a deep B-side or unreleased tracks. But I think our working list right now is like 35 songs, so it's like much more just boom, boom, boom. We want high energy. Like I said, loud guitars and, we do what we do. I think we're in a place to really celebrate the Black Crowes right now, Rich and I. And I feel that's what I feel the whole thing's about,
It had to suck though to be so ramped up, so ready to go. I know you did a bunch of promo. You were on Howard Stern. You did a couple small club shows to warm up. Like, you guys were right on the launching pad before things got shut down. That had to just suck. You had to be like, man, this really isn't meant to happen for us.
I know, it's so funny because also I think Rich and I just chalk it up to the Black Crowes. You know what I mean? Like in the summer of '92, we're like one of the biggest bands in the world, and we go play festivals in Europe, and like we're on Saturday night. Well, Friday night was beautiful. Saturday was pissing rain. Like everywhere we went, we were like Linus or whatever. You know what I mean? I was like, oh my God. But you know what, man? Like I said, our team, you know what I mean? From Mark Didia, to CAA and Live Nation, we've never had such a strong backbone of people with vision and, the kind of let's get it done mentality. And so, and like we were saying, it's been great for the first time ever to try to deal with real life, not tour life, But trust me, I'm ready for real life to be over,
I think a lot of people are. Just a couple other quick things, man, and I'll let you go. So the plan is this tour, and then I know there's stuff in Europe where the Black Crowes have always been very popular. And is this going to run for like a couple years celebrating Shake Your Moneymaker? And, is there a time frame that you want to maybe record some of these 20 songs that you have written? What's the projection?
I think we still like to play it kind of loose. So, like I said, getting this year up and running. And then, of course, we have Japan and Australia, New Zealand, eventually, hopefully, South America can get it together because we have a lot of fans there. We were supposed to play. And then there's festival. Yeah. I mean, we're definitely plugged in for the next couple of years, I think, before. But who knows? You know what I mean? If Rich and I feel like it, we'll be in the studio in January or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, but it's definitely right now about focusing on the tour and seeing what, you know what I mean? And just getting out there and seeing what life's going to be like. And but we're excited, man. People, we're selling lots of tickets. People are excited. They want, we're one of the really first rock and roll shows to go out in America. So I think people will just be really fired up.
And how are you feeling? I've always loved your voice. You're great on stage. You're always moving. You mentioned just a few minutes ago, I think you said you're 54, which certainly isn't old, but not young. But do you do anything to prepare for a tour, to keep your pipes in shape, to keep your wind in shape, because you're always moving? I mean, is there a process you go through?
No, I mean, not especially. I mean, I want to at least try to walk 4 or 5 miles a day. But the singing is the singing. I've been doing it a long time. Again, you know what I mean? I'm not a pop singer. I'm a rock and roll singer. And, I probably don't have maybe as the same high notes that I had, of course, when I was in my 20s, but where my voice is, I mean, I think it's stronger than it was before. I mean, obviously, we don't, I don't have the same chemical lifestyle I had in my youth, and, trying to balance eternal search for bliss and and the job at hand, but yeah, that stuff's different. But it's also kind of you get into tour shape a little bit, you know what I mean? But we all feel good, you know what I mean? And everyone's so ready to go, and it's not the first time around, you know what I mean? So it's kind of you know what to expect. I mean, and all I'll really expect is to be sweating through my outfits because it's summertime and we're rocking and rolling, and I'll be drenched in sweat every night.
You very casually mentioned a few minutes ago, yeah, I played with Jimmy Page, which is still got to be a surreal thing to have come out of your mouth. I still listen to Live at the Greek still all the time. I mean, it's amazing. When you look back on having done that, I imagine it still, as a fan, kind of feels surreal to you.
Yeah, definitely. It was funny because Rich was talking about it. I'm so really proud of it. You know what I'm really proud of? A couple of years ago, I saw Robert, and I hadn't, I knew Robert before Jimmy. I mean, when I was 23 years old, I had to open for Steven Tyler and Robert Plant back to back. They don't really do front men anymore. There's not too many of us in that old school mold. But I saw Robert. I went to see him at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles, and I hadn't seen him in many years, and he's so charming and so cool. And he gave me his blessing, and he said he thought I had done a great job on the vocals. And, you're out in the world, and there's a lot of Led Zeppelin fans, man. And usually they come up and say, really, no one's ever said, hey, man, that 10 years gone was bullshit or whatever, It's in our wheelhouse. I think the thing about Jimmy, and one of the reasons that we hit it off so well musically and as friends, was, we had a lot of great nights after the show, in my suite or whatever. And back then we still had CDs, and I would always travel with literally a couple hundred CDs in this heavy case that the bellman would always be like, oh no, I work at the hotel, not the Black Crowes guy with his 500-pound CD case. But we would hang out, and Jimmy would go through the CDs, like, oh, you have this record. Oh my God, you have this record. And we would just listen to records, and a lot of blues records, and stuff, and R&B records, and early rock and roll records. And, again, all the people in my life that I'm friends with, no matter what kind of band they're in, and a lot of, or anyone, it's about records, man. It's about loving music, and it's about, it's funny, growing up, we were into guitars and stuff. And a band, let's just say a band like Depeche Mode. I didn't even like Depeche Mode. And now, when I hear Depeche Mode, or my wife plays a Depeche Mode record, I'm like, oh my God, every song is genius. You know what I mean? And it also has something to do with just where we are. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of craft. There's not a lot of imagination, and a lot, you know what I mean? And so anytime I hear a great song, it's just a great song, and it makes me so happy and inspires me. Every day I hear something that inspires me.
Chris, I still have all my CDs, and I love them, and people will take them from my cold dead hands because it's still my favorite format. And I still travel with them, and I still play them, and they still sound the best, and I love them. So yeah, I'm big time on the CD bandwagon. I still want CDs now, and thankfully they're still hanging in there. But I'm with you 100% on that. Two quick things, and I'll let you go. You have an opening band joining you for this run. That you mentioned you mentioned Mark Didia, who's an old friend of mine and is managing these guys as well as you. They are a fantastic young band on the road now. I get compliments about them every day. Dirty Honey. Tell me about taking them out on the road and what you see in them as a young emerging rock band.
I see. Well, one thing, they're very nice guys. I mean, I know Mark pretty much. I don't know the other guys that well. They're very clean to be named Dirty Honey. They smell good. Great rock and roll band. Mark's got great vocals. And I think the one thing that I like about any band is their sincerity. You know what I mean? And like, you can play any kind of music as long as it's, to me, you know, there's obviously a difference between something that's, you know, obviously something contrived and something that's like really sincere. The sincerity shows the depth. They want to work hard. They work really hard. They love rock and roll. I couldn't be happier to have a band like that out with us at this time and what we're doing. Kudos to them, man. They're doing great. But, you know,
yeah,
it's the same thing. There's no music business, but you go to Amoeba Records and there's a line out the door. You know what I mean? Like, there's no music, there's no rock and roll, but we're selling tens of thousands of tickets. Rock bands are selling tens of thousands of tickets. You know, all these bands. So it's funny that there's no rock and roll. Dirty Honey's doing great. They're a fucking rock and roll band. So it's there. You know what I mean? It's just like, I think it kind of makes it cool again as well, that it's not the main thing, you know what I mean? And maybe it keeps some of the pretenders at the gate, you know?
Yeah.
But there's so much cool stuff. I'm just super happy for them and happy that they're on tour with us.
Last thing, I couldn't let you go without asking you, bringing this up. You and I had a dear mutual friend that passed away a couple years ago, Neil Casal. And I know he played in your band, and you know, we lost Neil. I guess it's been a couple years now, but
2 years in August. Yeah.
Yeah. When I think of you, you know, I'm sure you remember this, but a few years ago, you and I met in the lobby at Sirius XM because I was talking to Neil, and we were catching up, and you were there because you were going to be playing. And I remember that you walked over to Neil and I talking, and you looked at Neil and you go, "So you weren't bullshitting me," or something like that, because and you had walked away, and I said to Neil, I go, "What was that about?" And he said something about you guys were on the bus and you used to watch my old TV show or something. And Neil had said that he grew up with me or whatever. And it was just a really funny moment.
You must be the only other person who remembers Neil's favorite Jersey hard rock band, SS Steel.
Well, before that, he was in a band called Exire, Exire. I have the cassette. That's when I first met him. But yeah, talk a little bit about Neil, if you will, for a second. I know you guys were close, and I know that he was a big part of your band, and it just sucks that we lost him.
Yeah. We lose so many people, but it's usually when you're younger, you know, whether it's drugs or an accident or, you know, people taking their own lives. So, you know, you feel sometimes that, you know, now you get older, you lose people to sickness and things, you know. So, but for this to happen, it's still just a kick in the guts, you know. Like, I thought I'd been through some stuff, and we all have. We've all been through loss, and we all understand this kind of pain. But for it to really, you know, the CRB especially started off as something so genuine and, you know, like beautiful. I mean, I know a lot. It has nothing to do with my Black Crowes life, or I didn't sing the same. I play guitar. We wrote all songs. We were a psychedelic hippie band, you know, a roots oriented psychedelic hippie group, and unashamedly so. And Neil was just unimaginably talented guitarist. I mean, besides, the only other person that could ever get close to like his harmony singing with me was so special. Every night, every single night, I pushed Neil really hard as a guitarist to kind of break out of the mold of where he was into something very different, more expansive, somebody more available to improvisation. And he took to that like a duck to water. And just overall, I never, ever heard anyone have anything negative to say about Neil. you know?
Yeah.
And that's really, that's unbelievable in this business. And, you know, it's funny. I had a dream about him a couple months ago, and I don't dream like that, but it was so, and my wife wrote it down and put it on the refrigerator. And Neil, he came to me and he goes, I just want everyone to know I'm really happy now. I feel really good. And I don't want anyone to be mad at me. And I was like, and I woke up, I was like, wow, that was really heavy, man. That was really, really weird. But it made me feel good, you know? And, you know, Neil saw the Black Crowes homecoming show from those live recordings from the box set. He was at that show in Atlanta. He saw us play in Livonia, Michigan, like on our first tour opening for Junkyard. And, you know, so he was a Stones guy and a Ronnie Wood guy, a Faces guy, a Humble Pie guy. He loved Free and Paul Kossoff and all this stuff that we, you know, Neil and I would be on the bus late listening to that and the first couple of Aerosmith records, and the other guys would be like, you know, if it's not the Grateful Dead, they're going to bed, you know. So Neil was a real rock and roller at heart, a great musician, and just he's always missed, man.
Yeah, he is. That's why I wanted to mention him, because I remember that story and laugh about it all the time, because you had walked away and I said to Neil, I go, what was that about? And he goes, we were just always talking about metal and how I knew you and your show and this and that. And he's like, because you just walked up and you're like, so it is true. And then you kind of walked away.
Yeah, totally. I remember.
Anyway, man, thank you for some time here today, Chris. It's great to talk to you. I hope you come back, and I'm so psyched to see some of these shows. July 20th, kicking off in Nashville. The dates run through the end of September. Just go to the Black Crowes website. You'll see them all there, all the ticket information. Shake Your Money Maker to start in its entirety, and then about an hour of other great Black Crowes classics. Great to talk to you, man. Best to you and your family, and see you on the road soon.
It's only rock and roll, but we like it. You know what I mean? Thanks, Eddie. I appreciate it.
You got it. Take care, man. Chris Robinson, everybody from the Black Crowes, checking in with us on Trunk Nation.
कैसे भूल पैगु जड़ल हम